Hey everyone, Mr. Decker here. This video is for lesson 5 dealing with compositions in our unit 1 over transformations. The lesson objectives today are students will be able to understand the notation for compositions and then be able to perform compositions of translations, reflections, and rotations. The good thing about this lesson is it's mainly just a review. So as long as you know how to do translations, reflections, and rotations, super easy lesson. If you don't know how to do those, we're going to be able to review anyways, so just a good lesson in general just to kind of touch on stuff we've talked about. If you look at the graphic over here to the right, you should notice this is actually what a composition is. It's when you perform some sort of transformation and then you perform a second transformation on that, I guess, the already transformed figure. So this example right here, this GIF, is an example of what a composition would look like. The first one is a reflection over the y-axis. And then the second transformation is the reflection over the x-axis. And we'll talk about what the notation might look like for something like that. So just to kind of review real quick, transformations that we've covered before, we've talked about translations. Translations are kind of like sliding to a new place. So if you look at this figure right here, you should be able to notice that STUV does not have like these little primes on there. So that means that this black STUV is our pre-image or our starting image. And then the red or reddish orange S prime, T prime, U prime, V prime is going to be our after. So this just slid to a new position. More specifically, the rule that we would name for this translation would be capital T for translation. And then we have like our X and our Y. The X tells you that we're moving left or right. Since it's -1, we're moving left 1. And then my Y tells us we're moving up or down. Since it's -4, we're moving down 4. So you should be able to notice from these points, we moved from S to S prime and went left 1, down 4. From T to T prime, left 1, down 4. All right, let's talk about reflections. So reflections are the ones where you're just flipping it over a line. So it's like a mirror image over a line. So in this particular one, I think this one was more of a difficult one that we saw during the reflections unit, so I wanted to use this. So this one is a reflection, capital R, over the line x equals -1. So this is an equation of a line, x equals -1. What it is saying is that my x coordinate is always -1. So again, if we're looking at my x-axis here, on the x-axis, we're at -1 always. So the line is the line, or the line of reflection is the line that goes through all of my x equals -1 coordinates. Then when you're performing a reflection, all you have to do is take each point, count how many units it is to the line of reflection. So in this case for A, it's 1, 2, 3 units. And then we do the same number of units on the other side of the line. So we'd go 1, 2, 3. Same with C, we'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. And then the last one that we just looked at yesterday or the day before is rotations. So rotations are just a spinning. So keep in mind the little r stands for rotations. This degree or number here tells you basically how many degrees to rotate, or in this case, what we looked at is how many quadrants to hop. So 270 degrees means we're hopping 3 quadrants. So we take each point and we'd go 1, 2, 3. So X has to end up in this upper right. And then we talked about if it's a 90 or 270 degree rotation, you have to flip the numbers around. So you should be able to notice again how like the 4 and the 7 switch places, and so now it's 7, 4. And then because we're in the upper right-hand quadrant where we're ending, both are positive. All right, so that's just a quick review of all the transformations we've looked at so far. Now, compositions is just performing multiple transformations on the same figure. So for example, we could do a rotation and a translation. We could do a translation and a reflection. We could do a reflection and a rotation. You could do a translation and a translation. Really any other combination of the transformations that we've looked at. So we're exclusively going to look at just compositions of 2 transformations, but really you could have as many as you want. All right, so first things first is the notation for compositions. So the notation for compositions looks fairly similar to what we've already seen, except the big thing is this little open circle right here. This open circle literally tells you that it's a composition. And this arrow should actually be pointing at the composition here. So let me fix that real quick. Whoops. All right. So this composition in this particular example is we have a translation of 3, -5 and a reflection over the x-axis. So because it's a composition, the way that compositions work is we actually are going to work right to left. So in this case, well, just one second here. So with translation, the rule here would read 3 to the right because 3 is our x, so that's +3. And our y is -5, so that means we're going to go down 5. And then the reflection means that we're going to reflect all the points over the x-axis. And then whatever's in the, I guess whatever comes last, that is whatever you're reflecting here. So triangle DEF. Now, with compositions denoted by this open circle in the middle here, we're always going to work right to left, meaning that what we're going to do here, if we were going to do this problem, we would actually reflect over the x-axis first, then you would translate right 3 down 5. So again, we always work right to left. So in the next example, you would perform the reflection first, then the translation. So we're just going to do a couple examples just to see what it looks like. So example 1. You should be able to read this notation here and be able to make sense of it. So we're doing a composition, because that's what that open circle means here, of a translation of 3 units to the right, 2 units down, and a reflection over the x-axis. We're doing it to this triangle ABC. So first step, we're always working right to left. So we're going to do the reflection over the x-axis first. So over the x-axis, so x-axis is the horizontal line. So if you reflect over the horizontal line, we get for B, it would be 1. So then 1 on the other side, so B prime would be right here. For A, we would go down 2, so we go down 2 more on the other side, so A prime would be right here. And then C would be 1, 2, 3 up, so then we'd go 1, 2, 3 on the other side. And we would get this triangle looking like this, A prime, B prime, C prime. Now, after you perform the reflection, now you will do the translation. So again, we always did we go from right to left, so we did the reflection first, now we'll do the translation. The translation means that since x is 3, we're going right 3, -2 means we're going down 2. So if we take this triangle now, the green triangle, and we move it right 3, down 2, we should get our final result. And anytime that you're performing multiple translations, we're just going to use this kind of double prime. So here this was A prime, B prime, C prime. Now in this final triangle, it would be A double prime, B double prime, C double prime. And this would be our final result after performing this composition. Now, as it relates to the assignment that you're going to do online, and we'll talk about that in a different video, a glide reflection is the term that's given to a composition where you're doing a reflection and a translation. So on the assignment, they'll say this glide reflection here, all they're talking about is it's basically just a reflection and a translation. That's all that means. Also on the assignment, rather than saying x-axis or y-axis, they actually use the equations y = 0. So y = 0 means that on my y-axis over here, I'm at 0 all the time. So that means that the x-axis is actually the same thing as y = 0. So again, this can be kind of confusing, so make sure if you don't write this down, just keep it in mind as you're working on the assignment. The y-axis is the same as the y-axis right here is the same thing as if my x-coordinate was at 0. So they're talking about this whole vertical line here. So this is kind of confusing. Make sure you write it down somewhere or pay attention. That way you have it for the assignment. All right, example 2. So we're just going to go through this one again. Example 2, we are working right to left. So we would do the translation, 7 to the right, 3 down first. So that's what the first step is. We start by working right to left, perform the translation 7 right, 3 down, and we'll get the new triangle to the right down here. The green triangle. So again, you move every single point 7 and then down 3. And then finally, and then the second step or the second transformation would be this left 2, up 4. So then we're going to take our new triangle and move it left 2, up 4, and then we should get this next triangle, A prime, A double prime, B double prime, C double prime. 2 translations is usually, that one's probably one of the easier ones, but All right, let's look at a next example here. So example 3, this is 2 reflections. So these are going to be sometimes the trickier ones because if you don't go in the right order, you're going to get something that's completely different than what it should look like. So again, we always start right to left. If it's a composition by this open circle here, so we're going to do the reflection over y equals 2 first. So y equals 2 means that my y-axis, my y-coordinate here is always at 2. So it doesn't move up or down from 2. It's just going to stay right at 2 on the y-axis. That's y equals 2. So if we reflect over that line, again, reflecting is just counting the number of units to the line that you're reflecting over and then counting the same number of units on the other side. So A prime lands here, B prime lands here, C prime lands here. And then our second one is a reflection over the y-axis. So now we're going to take this new triangle here and we're going to reflect it over the y-axis, which is the vertical line. And then again, we're just going to count from our new points. A prime would go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So A prime, double prime will end here. B double prime and C double prime, you should see where they end up there. So again, a lot of this should just be a review of how to actually perform these transformations, but this is a good lesson to kind of make sure that you know how these transformations work too. All right, last example we're going to look at is how to perform the composition with a translation and then a rotation. So it all follows the same steps still. So since this is a composition, we work right to left. So we'll start with the translation. We're going to left 2, up 4. So that's what this is. So we'd move left 2, up 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's where B prime is. A prime, left 2, up 4. C prime is left 2, up 4. So this is where our new triangle is after the translation. And then now we're going to do a rotation of 180 degrees. So keep in mind that with 180 degrees, this is our 2 quadrant hops, meaning that since we're looking at A prime here, if I'm looking at A prime, 2 quadrant hops, again, we're going counterclockwise for rotations, would be 2 quadrant hops. So I'm hopping down to this quadrant and then this quadrant. So that means that A is going to end up in this bottom right quadrant, which means is that my X's should be positive and my Y should be negative. So again, where it ends up in the quadrant kind of tells you what your coordinates should be. And then keep in mind that with the 180, this is the ones where the numbers don't switch, meaning that if B prime was at 0, 3, it would still be in the order 0 then 3. Or C prime is at 1, 2, so it would still be 1, 2 in that order, except now it's at negative 1, 2. So again, just more so just reviewing how to do transformations for compositions. So in summary, pretty much what you need to remember is that we always go right to left. So it's always the second one that you do first, and then the first one you do second. So it's a little backwards, so keep that in mind. The transformations that we're going to do it with are translations, reflections, and rotations. If you need to review those, look at our previous lesson folders on Schoology, lessons 2, 3, and 4. Otherwise, there is a lesson 5 assignment on Schoology, but it will actually take you to a new link on the Pearson Realize site, and Savas Realize site. And I'm actually going to make a different video to show you how to access that. So hopefully you got everything you needed out of this. Thank you.